I think most YouTube experts are wrong. They'll tell you that the reason people return to you after rejecting you is some combination of them noticing you're doing well.
Number one, you're doing well and she noticed.
That they miss your good intentions.
She misses your good intentions.
Or that they miss your validation.
He misses your validation.
Here's the real reason. This is a study conducted by Helen Fisher. She basically found that the reason romantic rejection gets us hooked is that this sort of rejection stimulates parts of the brain associated with motivation, reward, addiction, and cravings. Now, in this study, Fisher observed the brain activity of 15 young adults from a college age group who, despite having experienced romantic rejection recently, professed to still feeling deeply in love with their exes. Basically, they had all gone through breakups. Now, the experiment she conducted involved these individuals viewing a photograph of their ex. Then, to divert their focus from their romantic feelings towards their ex, they engaged in a series of mathematical tasks that required them to subtract numbers, specifically starting from 4,529 and subtracting it by intervals of 7. Pretty complicated. Then, after this mental diversion, they were presented with an image of someone they knew but had no romantic feelings for. Fisher found a heightened brain activity in the regions linked to desire, pleasure-seeking, longing, addiction, physical discomfort, and emotional turmoil when participants were exposed to images of their rejectors compared to when they viewed images of people for whom they harbored no romantic interest. But essentially what the study is saying is that people in this situation are suffering from a drug addiction. And that drug is the person rejecting us. And it makes sense if you think about it. These are the common stages that a drug addict will go through when they're looking to get clean, but ultimately relapse. They'll go through a pre-contemplation stage, which usually means they'll deny they have any kind of problem or get defensive about it. Then they'll go through the contemplation stage. Here's where the person starts to acknowledge that they have a problem. They entertain making a change, but take no real action. Then they have the preparation stage. Here's where they decide that they're going to try to stop using the substance. They do all the research on how to achieve that goal. Then you have the action phase. They begin to modify their behavior to quit. They'll enter some sort of treatment or therapy. Then there's the maintenance phase. They'll work to sustain their drug-free lifestyle, but the pull of the drug is strong, which leads them to relapse, which is a common part of the process where the individual returns to their drug use after a period of abstinence. Now, I know this is a really odd analogy, but stay with me here. What if I told you that individuals who break up or get rejected go through the exact same phases, albeit with some different circumstances? Let's compare. You have the pre-contemplation stage where you have this person in a relationship who denies that the relationship has any problem. Then you, of course, have the contemplation stage. Something shifts within them. Usually their core wound gets triggered. They start entertaining the idea of breaking up or pulling away. Yet they're often too scared to take any kind of immediate action. Then you have the preparation stage. This is where they decide they're going to leave. They start thinking of the best way to go about it. Then the action stage occurs. They leave or reject you. Maintenance occurs. They want to stay gone, but the pull of you, of all the memories, of all the potential futures you could have together is too strong. And then they relapse. They come back after rejecting you. Yes, indeed, love is a drug. So we have the how it works, but we don't quite have the why it works. Like, why is it that people respond to rejection in this way? I mean, look no further than something like the no contact rule. Universally, the no contact rule is looked at as this strategy that's supposed to make an ex miss you. And yet, when you get down to it, it doesn't usually work the way you're expecting it to. Check this out. This is a poll I ran a few years ago asking members of my community how often their exes actually reached out to them during the no contact rule. As you can see, 64% of the people who responded said that their ex never reached out to them at all during no contact. Oh, and by the way, the vast majority of the people who responded in that poll were rejected. They were broken up with. So you'd think that someone who rejected you but was ready to return would likely reach out to you with this period of space given during the no contact rule. And yet that's not what happened. So what gives? What is going on? Well, I think it's an oversimplification to say that someone rejecting you automatically means that person will come back to you. It doesn't. There's more to it than them just rejecting you. They have to crave you. After all, a drug addict only craves what they're hooked on. Let's go back to our little rejection cycle graphic and pay special attention to that maintenance phase. That's where the craving happens. They essentially fail to maintain a life without you, and their addiction pulls them back in. This, of course, also explains why not every person who rejects you comes back to you. Take a look at this. This is a snippet from a survey conducted by the Associated Press asking individuals all sorts of questions about exes. They basically concluded that over 4 in 10 have broken up with someone only to get back together again, and more than a third have slept with their ex. Now, finding actual percentages of what your chances are of getting your ex back online is notoriously difficult. But this study was the closest I could find to creating a baseline, 40%. But that also means that 60% of the time, couples who break up do not get reunited. So the question becomes, what separates the 40% from the 60%? Well, I think it comes back to that craving concept. Check this out. This is a representation of the coaching clients my wife and I personally took on in 2017. As you can see, there were only 10 individuals who we coached. Out of those 10, every single one was broken up with. My wife and I did initial calls with them, and then for the next few months answered their questions in our private community. By month 6, after beginning coaching with us, 7 of them ended up reuniting with their exes. Now, before you lean forward and say, that's amazing, let's put this 70% number in perspective here. These 10 clients that my wife and I coached were essentially on a trial run. We hadn't launched coaching yet. We were just trying the idea out, so we poured all of our energy into figuring out what would work for people. This means they received almost around-the-clock care. They had a problem in the moment, we were there to answer or guide. They had a question about how to text their ex, we were there to help them craft the text. We no longer have time to offer around-the-clock care to people on this level. Yet the other truth that often gets glossed over is the fact that, according to that Associated Press study earlier, 4 out of 10 people get back with their exes anyways. So that means that no matter what, 4 out of our 7 success stories would have gotten their exes back even without our help. All my wife and I ended up accomplishing was helping 3 extra people see success. So yes, while 7 out of 10 seems like an impressive number, it's important to understand the entire context. Yet technically speaking, 7 out of 10 does beat the average. Why? What did we do that caused these exes who rejected our clients to come back into the fray? All right, I'm going to level with you. I was interviewing psychoanalyst Erica Comazar lately, and she said something super controversial, which I actually loved.
And psychoanalysts don't like to use this term, but I'm going to use it because it's true. Therapy is an emotionally reparative experience.
Okay. They don't like that?
No, because it's not even what your therapist says. It's the relationship. It's not like there's some magic, wisdom that comes. Sometimes there is. Sometimes there's magic that comes out of your therapist's mouth and you go, wow, that's quite an interpretation. That's so right. Sometimes that happens. It does. But most of the time, it is the emotional attunement of that relationship. It is the consistency of that relationship. It is the long time trust and a kind of empathy that you have never had in your life that is the healing of that experience. Not the magic, not the medicine, but the relationship itself.
This is probably the closest explanation I can think of or have seen to explain why my wife and I saw the results that we did. It's less about what we said. It's more about the environment that we created. Our clients had a place to vent. Let's recap a little bit before I continue. So we know that the big reason people return after rejecting you has a lot to do with the concept of addiction. But in order for a partner to have an addiction, they need to crave you. And the reason most people don't come back after rejecting you is that they aren't craving you. So the real question becomes, how the heck do you get them to crave you? Well, let's revisit that safe space concept I just talked about. There are 2 very important internal polls that I'd like to turn your attention to. There's this one, which shows that most of our clients exhibit anxious attachment styles. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because someone with an anxious core wound has this constant need to ask for reassurance. They're afraid of being abandoned. Then there's this poll, which shows that most of our clients' exes, the people who reject them, are believed to be dismissive avoidants. A dismissive avoidance core wound revolves around this insatiable need for independence, which will ultimately lead them to seek space. So what I often see unfolds in the average breakup scenario is this cycle. The avoidant ex breaks up with the anxious client. This in turn causes the anxious client to go berserk trying to get the avoidant back, which ultimately leads to the avoidant ex digging their heels in and thinking they made the right decision by leaving. In other words, this is not a recipe for success. The avoidant ex is not craving the anxious client, and so they do not come back. All right, let's pull up my wife and I's results with coaching clients. What I think made our results better than the average is that we just simply played the numbers and tailored our advice to it. I'd like to point back at that clip I showed you with me interviewing Erica.
But most of the time, it is the emotional attunement of that relationship. It is the consistency of that relationship.
Consistency. Everyone always thinks there's some sort of secret advice given in coaching, some magic pill that you can take that will solve all of your problems. That's not been my experience. Rather, I think of coaching like this. This is a bowling lane. Now, the point of bowling, of course, is to knock down all the pins here. Of course, when you bowl, especially if you're inexperienced, you're prone to spinning your bowling ball in the gutter. Yet there is something you can do if you're a beginner. You can play with bumpers. This makes having a gutter ball impossible, but it also doesn't guarantee you'll knock all the pins down every time. Yet it does dramatically improve your chances. My experience with those 7 out of 10 people that we coached was that my wife and I were their bumpers. Let's use our bowling analogy again. You have our client here. They are the person bowling the ball. You have the bumpers here. That's Jen and I. And then you have the pins. That represents getting the person back who rejected them. Now our client throws the ball and almost immediately we know it's going to be a gutter ball. But because of the bumpers, there was Jen and I to redirect it and get the client back on the path. So what are these bumper-like actions that Jen and I are doing? Well, honestly, more than anything, it was getting our clients to identify their own anxious behaviors. And then we would have them redirect that energy and pour it into more positive behaviors. And often, if they'd follow directions, they'd knock over the pins. All right, real talk. That whole bowling analogy, there's a part of me that deeply dislikes what I do. And I've had a lot of time to think about this. And I think the reason I have an issue with it is I feel like it glorifies getting an ex back. If I'm being brutally honest, I don't like helping people get their exes back. I know that a lot of times that's why people hire me or buy my products, but it doesn't really bring me enjoyment. Take this little factoid, for example. Approximately 50% of the couples that I had a hand in reuniting end up breaking up again within a year. We'll use Sarah Michelle as an example. So I interviewed her a week after she had gotten her ex back. Then a few weeks later after she had gotten engaged to her ex. Then you fast forward a few months later, I interviewed her again right after she had been broken up with once more and had to move on to someone else. I personally struggle with the feeling that I'm prolonging someone's suffering. After all, what is the point of helping a couple reunite if they're just going to be in this endless cycle of breaking up over and over and over again? That doesn't solve the problem. That prolongs it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you shouldn't get your ex back if that's what you want. For every Sarah Michelle, there's a story like Jesse's, who is married to her ex, and as far as I can tell, still going strong to this very day. I want to have more stories like Jesse's. For me, that's the only way reuniting makes sense. Yet the path to getting there comes at a deep cost. Are you familiar with the phrase, pull the wool over your eyes? It dates to at least the early 19th century. It's an idiom that basically describes tricking someone or deceiving someone. I view every video I make, every interaction I have, pretty much everything I do as a way to help you get the wool off your eyes, specifically so that you can view the truth of your circumstance and make an educated decision going forward. You want to get your ex back. You want to find out why that person rejected you. You're asking the wrong questions. Here's the right question. Why do you want them back? Is it love, fear of loneliness, societal pressure, or something else driving this desire? And then once you've answered that question, here's another question that I want you to answer. Are they worth getting back? The person who rejected you is likely the reason you're watching this video. Right now, you probably view them like they're on some sort of pedestal. For you, they may be the one that got away, but it's not really until you knock them from that pedestal that you can see them and the situation for what they truly are. Now, this process of knocking them from their pedestal isn't about demonizing them or making you feel like you're better than them. It's about recognizing that they, like everyone else, have flaws and limitations. It's about understanding that this idealized version that you're holding in your head of your ex or this person who rejected you might not match up with reality. And then once you've knocked them from that pedestal, I want you to ask the same 2 questions as before. Why do I want them back? Are they worth getting back? If you don't have good answers to these questions, then I'm telling you, your time is better spent elsewhere. My secret hope for everyone watching this video is that you gain the strength you need to realize that you don't need to get them back. And in that process, in that realization, you become something that transcends the way they were expecting you to react, which of course makes them want to come back.